You fight me? Are you kidding? Marcus laughed so hard he nearly choked on his protein shake. The entire martial arts gym went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing to stare. Sarah stood at the gym entrance, still in her work uniform from the coffee shop down the street. Her hands shook slightly, but her eyes burned with quiet determination. "I said I want to join your class," she repeated, her voice steady despite the trembling. Marcus wiped tears from his eyes. This third-degree black belt, with his perfect muscles and shiny trophies lining the wall behind him, looked at Sarah like she was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Lady, this isn't yoga class. This is real martial arts. Look at you." He pointed at her small frame, her tired face, her cheap sneakers. "You probably can't even do 10 push-ups." The other students snickered. Some pulled out their phones to record. They could smell drama brewing, and in today's world, drama meant views. But what happened next would shock everyone in that gym. What Marcus didn't know about Sarah would change everything. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why you should never judge someone by how they look. Stay with me, because this story has 3 incredible twists that will blow your mind. The first happens in just a few minutes, the second will make you gasp, and the third? Well, let's just say Marcus's entire world is about to crumble. Hit that subscribe button now, because stories like this remind us all of something very important about respect and humility. Let me take you back to the beginning, 2 hours before this confrontation that would go viral across the internet. Sarah Martinez sat in the break room of Daily Grind Coffee, staring at her reflection in the black screen of her phone. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of another sleepless night. Another night of nightmares that transported her back to places she tried desperately to forget. Her manager, Jennifer, burst through the door with her usual attitude. "Sarah, table 6 is complaining their latte is cold again. Can you please try to pay attention?" "Sorry, I'll fix it right away." Sarah stood up, straightening her apron. "Look, I know you've got issues," Jennifer said, not even trying to lower her voice. "But customers don't care about your problems. They want good service. If you can't handle this job..." Sarah nodded quietly. She needed this job. The nightmares made sleeping impossible, which made working difficult, which made everything else fall apart like dominoes. But she needed the money. The bills didn't care about her struggles. She walked back to table 6, where a businessman in an expensive suit tapped his fingers impatiently on the table. "Excuse me, sir. I'm so sorry about your latte. Let me make you a fresh one, no charge." He looked up from his phone with an annoyed expression. "This is the 3rd time this week. Are you people even trained? I could make better coffee at home?" "Yes, sir. I understand your frustration. Give me just 2 minutes." As Sarah turned to leave, she heard him mutter to his friend, "Probably another veteran who can't adjust to real life. They hire these people out of pity." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her hands clenched into fists for just a moment before she forced them to relax. She'd learned long ago that fighting every battle wasn't worth it. "Pick your fights carefully," her old sergeant used to say. But sometimes life picks the fight for you. After her shift ended, Sarah walked down Main Street with no real destination in mind. Walking helped clear her head, helped quiet the voices that whispered about things she'd rather forget. That's when she passed the big windows of Dragon's Den Martial Arts. Through the glass, she saw students practicing kicks and punches. They moved with such control, such focus. For a moment, watching them, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. The instructor, a tall Asian man with kind eyes, noticed her watching. He walked over and opened the door. "Interested in martial arts?" he asked with a gentle smile. "Oh, I was just looking," Sarah said quickly. "I should go. I'm Master Chen. This is my school. You're welcome to watch if you'd like. We believe martial arts can help people find balance in their lives." Something in his tone made Sarah pause. "I don't think I'd be very good at it." The best students are often the ones who think they won't be good at it. They have nothing to prove, so they learn faster. Master Chen stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "No pressure. Just watch." Sarah hesitated, then stepped inside. The gym smelled like sweat and determination. Students of all ages practiced together. Teenagers, middle-aged office workers, even a grandmother who moved with surprising grace. "We have a beginner's class starting next week," Master Chen said quietly. "First lesson is free. I can't afford. We have a work-study program. You help clean the gym and classes are free." Sarah's eyes widened. "Really? Really? What's your name?" "Sarah," Sarah Martinez. Well, Sarah Martinez, I think martial arts might be exactly what you're looking for. But before Sarah could respond, the front door burst open with a loud bang. In walked Marcus Thompson, and the entire atmosphere of the gym changed instantly. Marcus stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, with muscles that looked like they'd been carved from stone. His black belt was pristine and he wore it like a crown. Behind him followed 3 younger students, all trying to copy his swagger. "Master Chen," Marcus called out, his voice echoing through the gym. "I hope you're not going soft on these beginners. I saw some pretty weak techniques out there." Master Chen's smile faded slightly. "Marcus, we've talked about this. Everyone learns at their own pace." "Right, but some people just aren't cut out for this." Marcus's eyes scanned the room and landed on Sarah. Like civilians, who think they can just walk in and play fighter, Sarah felt every eye in the room turned toward her. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Sarah was just observing," Master Chen said calmly. "Sarah, huh?" Marcus walked closer, studying her like a scientist examining a bug. "Let me guess. You saw a movie and thought martial arts looked fun? Or maybe you want to find yourself like all these suburban soccer moms?" I was just watching," Sarah said quietly. "Smart choice. Stick to watching. This stuff isn't for everyone." Marcus turned to Master Chen. "Master, you can't keep lowering our standards. This school used to mean something." Master Chen's jaw tightened. "This school means helping people, Marcus. All people. Helping them get hurt, maybe. Look at her." Marcus gestured toward Sarah. "She probably can't even run a mile without stopping. You want to put her in a ring with real fighters?" The younger students behind Marcus laughed. Sarah felt smaller and smaller with each word. But then something sparked in her eyes. Something Marcus didn't recognize but should have. "What makes you think I can't run a mile?" Sarah asked, her voice still quiet but with a new edge to it. Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Oh, you're going to argue with me? Okay, prove it. Right now. Let's see what you've got." "Marcus, that's enough," Master Chen warned. "No, it's okay," Sarah said, stepping forward. "What did you have in mind?" Marcus grinned like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Simple, basic fitness test. Push-ups, sit-ups, and a 1-mile run. If you can keep up with my warm-up routine, I'll admit you might belong here. When you can't," he shrugged. "Well, at least you'll know where you stand." The gym went completely silent. Every student stopped their practice to watch this confrontation unfold. Some whispered to each other, placing bets on how quickly Sarah would give up. Master Chen looked concerned. "Sarah, you don't have to do this." But Sarah was already kicking off her coffee shop shoes. "What's the warm-up routine?" Marcus's grin widened. 50 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, mile run in under 8 minutes. Standard military stuff, though I doubt you know anything about that. If only he knew, Sarah thought to herself. If only any of them knew. "And when I complete it?" Sarah asked. Marcus laughed. "If you complete it, which you won't, I'll personally apologize and welcome you to the gym. But when you quit halfway through, you admit this isn't for you and find a nice yoga class instead." Sarah looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Young students, older adults, Master Chen with his worried expression and Marcus with his smug certainty. "Deal," she said. Marcus clapped his hands together. "Excellent. Everyone gather around. This should be quick and educational." As the students formed a circle, Sarah quietly rolled up her sleeves. For just a moment, those closest to her could see something on her forearms. Scars maybe, or tattoos. But they were small and faded, easy to miss if you weren't looking carefully. Marcus wasn't looking carefully. He was too busy enjoying his moment of superiority. "Okay, lady, let's start with push-ups. 50 military style, and don't even think about doing them on your knees." Sarah dropped into position without a word. Her form was perfect. Back straight, hands positioned exactly right, body aligned like a plank of wood. Marcus rolled his eyes. "Anyone can do the first few. Let's see how long that lasts," Sarah began. 1, 2, 3. Her movements were controlled, precise. No wasted energy, no showing off. Just mechanical efficiency, 10, 15, 20. Marcus's smile started to fade. Sarah's form hadn't broken at all. If anything, she looked like she was just getting started. 25. 30. 35. The whispers around the room changed tone. This wasn't what anyone expected. Several students pulled out their phones to record. 40, 45. Marcus stepped closer, looking for any sign that Sarah was struggling. Her breathing was steady. Her form was still perfect. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she showed no signs of slowing down. 50. Sarah held the last push-up for a full second before smoothly rising to her feet. She wasn't even breathing hard. The gym was silent except for the sound of Marcus's jaw dropping. "Okay," he said, his voice a little less confident. "That was lucky. Sit-ups are different. Let's see you do 100. Sarah lay down on the mat without a word. Someone held her feet, a teenage girl who whispered, "You've got this." And Sarah did have it. She knocked out 100 sit-ups like she was counting to 10. Her pace never varied. Her breathing never labored. She moved like a machine designed for exactly this purpose. When she finished, she stood up and looked directly at Marcus. "What's next?" Marcus stared at her for a long moment. The cocky smile was completely gone now. He was seeing Sarah for the first time, really seeing her, and he didn't like what he was discovering. "The run," he said quietly. 1 mile under 8 minutes. "Lead the way," Sarah replied. The entire gym emptied out onto the street. Master Chen had grabbed a stopwatch and the students formed a crowd on the sidewalk. This had turned into the most exciting thing to happen at the gym in months. Marcus stretched elaborately, making a show of his preparation. Sarah simply stood quietly looking down the street toward the route they would run. "You sure about this?" Marcus asked, one last attempt at intimidation. "It's not too late to quit and save yourself the embarrassment." Sarah turned to look at him. For just a moment her eyes held something that made Marcus take an unconscious step backward. It was the look of someone who had run for their life. Someone who had run through places where stopping meant death. But the moment passed and Sarah just nodded. "I'm ready." Master Chen raised his hand. 1 mile down Main Street to the park and back. "Ready, go!" They took off. Marcus shot ahead immediately, wanting to establish dominance early. He ran like he was in a sprint, fast and aggressive. The students cheered him on. Sarah settled into a different kind of rhythm. Her pace was steady, controlled, efficient. She ran like someone who understood that the real race isn't about the first 100 yards. By the quarter-mile mark, Marcus was still ahead, but his breathing had become labored. He kept looking back to see where Sarah was, and each time he looked, she was a little closer. By the half-mile mark, they were running side by side. Marcus tried to surge ahead, but his legs were starting to feel heavy. Sarah maintained her exact same pace like she had an internal metronome keeping time. At the 3/4-mile mark, Sarah pulled ahead. Marcus pushed harder, his face red with effort and embarrassment. How was this possible? How was this small woman in coffee shop clothes outrunning him? But Sarah wasn't just running. She was floating. Her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Her breathing was deep and controlled. She ran like someone who had covered thousands of miles in combat boots, carrying a full pack, in places where your life depended on your endurance. They turned the corner for the final stretch back to the gym, and Sarah was a full 50 yards ahead. Marcus stumbled, his form completely breaking down. He was gasping for air, his legs shaking with effort. Behind him, he could hear the students who had been cheering for him fall silent. Sarah crossed the finish line and immediately turned around to watch Marcus struggle through the last 100 yards. When he finally collapsed across the line, Master Chen clicked the stopwatch. 7 minutes. 12 seconds, Master Chen announced, looking at Sarah in amazement. Marcus was on his hands and knees, gasping for breath. What was my time? Master Chen looked uncomfortable. 9 minutes, 31 seconds. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Sarah walked over to where Marcus was still trying to catch his breath. She crouched down next to him, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle. "You're a good runner," she said. "You just need to pace yourself better." Marcus looked up at her, his face a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something else. Something that might have been respect. "Who are you?" he whispered. Sarah stood up and looked around at all the faces staring at her. Students with their phones still recording, Master Chen with his surprised smile, and Marcus still on the ground looking at her like he was seeing a ghost. "I'm just someone who wants to learn martial arts," she said simply. But Marcus wasn't buying it anymore. Nobody runs like that just from being in shape. Nobody does perfect push-ups and sit-ups without training. "Who are you?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the crowd waited for an answer that would explain what they'd just witnessed. But what she said next would only deepen the mystery. "I used to be in the military," Sarah said quietly, "but that was a long time ago." Marcus struggled to his feet, his legs still shaky. "What branch?" "Army. What did you do in the army?" Sarah looked away, her eyes focusing on something far in the distance. I did what I had to do, and that's when Marcus made the biggest mistake of his life. Oh, I get it now, he said, his voice getting louder as his embarrassment turned to anger. You're one of those veterans who thinks their military service makes them special. Well, guess what? This isn't the army, this is martial arts, and being able to run and do push-ups doesn't make you a fighter. The students murmured uneasily. This was taking a dark turn. Sarah's hands clenched briefly, then relaxed. I never said it did. I bet you were never even in combat, Marcus continued, his voice getting nastier. Probably sat behind a desk somewhere filing paperwork, and now you want everyone to think you're some kind of warrior. Master Chen stepped forward. Marcus, that's enough. But Marcus was on a roll now, his wounded pride driving him to say things he should never say. You know what I think? I think you're a fake. I think you made up the whole military thing to impress people. Because real soldiers, real fighters, they don't slink around coffee shops feeling sorry for themselves. Sarah went very still, the kind of still that predators recognize as dangerous. You don't know anything about my service, she said quietly. Prove it then, Marcus shouted. Stop hiding behind your sob story and prove you're actually a fighter. Fight me, right here, right now, the crowd gasped. Master Chen immediately stepped between them. Absolutely not. Marcus, you're out of line. But Sarah held up a hand. It's okay, Master Chen. She looked directly at Marcus, and this time she didn't look away when that dangerous light appeared in her eyes. You want to fight me? She asked. I want you to stop pretending to be something you're not, Marcus replied. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, but not here. And not like this. What do you mean? I mean, if we're going to do this, we do it right. Tomorrow night. Official match. Proper rules. And when it's over, one of us apologizes to the other in front of everyone. Marcus's confidence came flooding back. A real fight? In a controlled environment? With rules and referees? He was a third-degree black belt. This woman might be able to run and do push-ups, but fighting was completely different. Deal, he said quickly. But I choose the format. What format? Marcus grinned. Mixed martial arts. 3 5-minute rounds. Full contact, several students gasped. Master Chen looked horrified. Marcus, Sarah has no MMA training. That's not fair. She challenged me to prove she's a real fighter, Marcus replied. Well, this is how real fighters settle things. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering. MMA was brutal. It combined striking, grappling, and ground fighting. It wasn't just about fitness or even basic martial arts knowledge. It required years of specific training. But then Sarah remembered the businessman's words from earlier. Probably another veteran who can't adjust to real life. She remembered Marcus saying she was probably never even in combat. She remembered all the times people had looked at her like she was broken, or weak, or something to be pitied. Okay, she said. The word hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Master Chen grabbed her arm. Sarah, you can't be serious. MMA is extremely dangerous, especially if you don't have proper training. Sarah looked at him with a sad smile. Master Chen, I appreciate your concern, but some fights choose you. She turned back to Marcus. Tomorrow night. What time? Marcus was practically vibrating with excitement. This was going to be even easier than he'd thought. 7 p.m. I'll have all the proper equipment set up. Medical supervision. The works. Good. I'll be there. As the crowd began to disperse, murmuring excitedly about tomorrow night's fight, Sarah started walking away. Hey, Marcus called after her. Aren't you going to train? Get ready. Sarah paused and looked back over her shoulder. I've been ready for a long time, Marcus. The question is, are you? And with that, she disappeared into the evening crowd, leaving behind a gym full of people who had no idea what they had just witnessed. But Marcus wasn't worried. He was a trained fighter. She was just a veteran with some basic fitness. Tomorrow night he would put her in her place, and everyone would see who the real warrior was. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah Martinez wasn't just any veteran. What Marcus didn't know could fill a book, and tomorrow night he was about to get educated in ways he never imagined. The next morning, Sarah sat in her small apartment, staring at a photograph she kept hidden in her bedside drawer. The picture showed a younger version of herself in military fatigues, standing with her unit in front of a helicopter. Her face was harder then, more confident. She looked like someone who belonged in that world. Now she looked at her reflection in the mirror and saw someone different. Someone smaller, quieter, broken in ways that didn't show on the outside. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer at the coffee shop. Heard about your fight tonight. Don't expect sympathy if you get hurt. We need you at work tomorrow. Sarah deleted the message without responding. Another buzz. This one from Master Chen. Sarah, please reconsider. Marcus is dangerous when he's angry. There's no shame in walking away. But walking away wasn't an option anymore. Marcus had made this personal when he questioned her service. When he called her a fake, some insults you can ignore. Others cut too deep to let slide. Sarah pulled out her laptop and did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She logged into her old military email account. The inbox was full of messages she'd never answered. Messages from her old unit, from command. From people who wanted to know why she'd disappeared after coming home. Sarah scrolled past all of them until she found what she was looking for. A message from her old commanding officer, Colonel Richards, sent 8 months ago. Martinez, heard you were having a rough time adjusting. Call me if you need anything. You were one of my best. Don't forget that. Sarah stared at the message for a long time before closing the laptop. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus was having the best day of his life. Dude, this is going to be epic, his friend Jake said as they worked out at the gym. You're going to destroy her. I feel kind of bad about it, Marcus lied. He didn't feel bad at all. He felt excited. But she challenged me. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to do exactly what you're doing, said his other friend, Tom. These fake military people need to be exposed. They make real veterans look bad. Marcus nodded, though something about the way Sarah had run yesterday still bothered him. And those scars on her arms, he shook his head. Probably from a car accident or something. People love to make up dramatic stories about their injuries. Besides, Jake continued, this is going to be great for your reputation. When people see you destroy a veteran who's been acting all tough, it'll prove you're the real deal. That afternoon, word about the fight had spread throughout the community. The gym was buzzing with excitement, and people who'd never shown interest in martial arts were suddenly asking about attending. Master Chen tried one more time to stop it. Marcus, this isn't what martial arts is about. We don't fight to humiliate people. I'm not trying to humiliate her, Marcus replied. I'm trying to teach her a lesson about respect. She needs to learn that military service doesn't automatically make you a fighter. And what if you're wrong about her? Marcus laughed. Master Chen, with all due respect, I've been training for 15 years. She's a coffee shop worker with PTSD. What am I going to be wrong about? But Master Chen's worry wasn't about Marcus's fighting skills. It was about the look he'd seen in Sarah's eyes. He'd seen that look before many years ago, in other veterans who'd come through his doors. It was the look of someone who'd seen things that changed them forever. As evening approached, the gym filled with spectators. Word had spread on social media, and the crowd was much larger than anyone expected. Local MMA fighters had come to watch. College students with their phones ready to record. Even some older residents who'd heard about the fake veteran being exposed. Marcus arrived early, wearing his best fight gear. He shadowboxed for the cameras, showing off his technique. He was in his element, confident and powerful. Where is she? Someone called out. Marcus checked his watch. 6:55 p.m. Don't worry, she'll be here. She's not the type to back down now. Too much pride. 7 p.m. came and went. No, Sarah. Maybe she came to her senses, Jake suggested. Marcus tried to hide his disappointment. Part of him had been looking forward to this fight more than he wanted to admit. 7:05. 7:10. The crowd was getting restless. Some people started leaving. Then, at 7:15, the gym doors opened quietly. Sarah walked in, and the entire room fell silent. She wasn't wearing fancy fight gear like Marcus, just simple black shorts, a plain gray t-shirt, and basic athletic shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone who'd come to work out, not to fight. But something was different about her tonight. She moved differently, stood differently. The nervous energy that had surrounded her yesterday was gone, replaced by a calm focus that seemed to radiate outward. You're late, Marcus called out, trying to regain control of the room's energy. Sorry, Sarah said simply. I had to take care of some things. Master Chen approached her with protective gear. Sarah, you still have time to change your mind. Sarah looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Some curious, some excited, some clearly hoping to see her get hurt. "I'm good. Master Chen, thank you." As she put on the protective headgear and gloves, several people in the crowd noticed something they'd missed before. Sarah's movements were economical, precise. She didn't waste motion or energy. When she stretched, it was with the kind of flexibility that came from years of training. Marcus noticed too, and for the first time a small seed of doubt crept into his mind. The referee, a local MMA coach named Dave, called them both to the center of the mat. "Okay, we're keeping this simple. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. No strikes to the back of the head, no eye pokes, no groin strikes. If someone taps out, it's over immediately. If I see anyone getting seriously hurt, I stop the fight. Everyone understand?" Both fighters nodded. "Touch gloves and come out fighting." Marcus extended his gloves aggressively, trying to intimidate Sarah one last time. Sarah tapped them lightly and took a step back. The crowd pressed closer. Phones were raised. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. "Fight!" Marcus came out swinging. He threw a hard right cross aimed at Sarah's head, followed by a left hook to the body. These were fight-ending punches, meant to finish things quickly and impressively. Sarah wasn't there when they arrived. She'd moved just enough to let the punches whistle past her face. No wasted movement, no dramatic dodging. She simply wasn't where the punches were aimed. Marcus threw a combination, a jab, cross, hook, and uppercut. 4 hard shots that should have connected with something. Sarah slipped them all. The crowd murmured. This wasn't what they'd expected. Marcus stepped back, breathing a little harder than he should have been after just 30 seconds. "Stop running and fight me." Sarah said nothing. She just continued moving in that same calm, controlled way. Marcus lunged forward with a takedown attempt, trying to use his size and strength advantage to get Sarah to the ground where he could control her. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. As Marcus came in low, Sarah stepped to the side and used his own momentum to send him tumbling across the mat. It wasn't a dramatic throw or a fancy technique. It was just physics applied perfectly. Marcus scrambled back to his feet, his face red with embarrassment and effort. "Okay, you've got some moves," he panted, "but let's see how you handle this." He threw a spinning back fist, a flashy technique designed to catch opponents off guard. Sarah ducked under it and, for the first time in the fight, she struck back. It was just a simple jab to Marcus's ribs. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, but it landed with a sound that made everyone in the gym wince. Marcus doubled over, gasping. The crowd went completely silent. Sarah stepped back and waited for him to recover. "What the hell was that?" Marcus wheezed. Sarah didn't answer. She just resumed her patient, predatory circling. Marcus came at her again, this time throwing everything he had. Punches, kicks, elbows, knees. He fought like a man possessed, using every technique he'd learned in 15 years of training. And Sarah made him look like a beginner. She wasn't faster than him exactly. She wasn't stronger. But she was always exactly where she needed to be. When Marcus threw a punch, she was just outside its range. When he kicked, she was just to the side of his target. When he tried to grapple, she was just out of reach. It was like watching someone fight their own shadow. 2 minutes into the first round, Marcus was breathing heavily. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His technique was falling apart as frustration took over. Sarah looked like she'd barely warmed up. "Time," Dave called. Marcus stumbled to his corner where Jake and Tom waited with water and towels. "What's happening out there?" Jake demanded. "You're supposed to be destroying her." She's different than I expected," Marcus gasped. "It's like she knows what I'm going to do before I do it. She got lucky with that one punch. You've got her figured out now." But Marcus wasn't so sure. That punch to his ribs hadn't been lucky. It had been surgical, placed exactly where it would do the most damage with the least effort. In the opposite corner, Sarah sat alone. Master Chen approached with water. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "But be careful. He's going to get desperate." Sarah nodded. "I know, Sarah. Where did you learn to fight like that?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I learned from people who couldn't afford to lose." Round 2 began with Marcus trying to change his strategy. Instead of aggressive attacks, he tried to be more patient, more technical. It didn't matter. Sarah read his movements like she was reading a book. Every feint, every setup, every combination, she saw them all coming. But she didn't just defend anymore. She began to counter. When Marcus threw a jab, Sarah slipped it and returned a short hook to his liver. When he kicked, she checked it and followed with a straight right to his solar plexus. When he tried to clinch, she broke free and landed an elbow to his ribs. Each strike was precise, economical, and devastating. By the end of round 2, Marcus was hurt. Really hurt. He was breathing like he'd run a marathon, and dark bruises were forming on his torso where Sarah's strikes had landed. The crowd had gone from excited to uncomfortable. This wasn't the domination they'd expected. This was something else entirely. "This isn't right," someone whispered. "How is she doing this?" "Maybe she really was in the military," another voice suggested. "So what? Lots of people were in the military. That doesn't make them fighters." But Sarah wasn't fighting like someone with basic military training. She was fighting like someone who'd learned in a much harder school. Before round 3 began, Marcus's corner was in full panic mode. "You have to do something," Tom hissed. "Everyone's recording this. If you lose to her—" "I'm not going to lose," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then fight dirty. Do whatever you have to do." Marcus looked across the mat at Sarah, who sat calmly in her corner, showing no signs of fatigue. "Last round," Dave announced. "Fight!" Marcus came out desperate and dangerous. He threw illegal strikes, tried to grab the fence that wasn't there, and generally abandoned any pretense of following the rules. Sarah adapted instantly. When he threw an elbow to the back of her head, she ducked and countered with an uppercut that lifted him off his feet. When he tried to grab her shorts, she broke his grip and landed a knee to his midsection that doubled him over. And then, with 1 minute left in the fight, Sarah decided to end it. Marcus threw a wild haymaker, putting everything he had left into one desperate punch. Sarah stepped inside it, caught his arm, and in one fluid motion, took him to the ground. The takedown was so smooth, so perfect, that it looked choreographed. Marcus found himself flat on his back with Sarah controlling his arm in a position he'd never experienced before. "Tap," Sarah said quietly. "Tap out." Marcus tried to escape, but Sarah adjusted her grip and applied more pressure. Pain shot through his shoulder and elbow. "Tap," Sarah said more forcefully. Marcus tapped frantically, and Sarah released him immediately. The gym was dead silent. Marcus lay on the mat, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. Sarah stood up and offered him her hand. He looked at it for a moment, then accepted her help getting to his feet. "Good fight," Sarah said simply. Marcus just stared at her. "Who are you, really?" Sarah removed her gloves and headgear. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to hear her answer. "You want to know who I am?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying clearly through the silent gym. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing the scars and tattoos that people had only glimpsed before. But now, in the gym's bright lights, everyone could see them clearly. They weren't random scars. They were organized, purposeful. And the tattoos. Master Chen stepped closer and read one of them aloud. "Rangers lead the way." The gym erupted in whispers. "Your Army Rangers?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I was," Sarah replied. 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the crowd Googled 75th Rangers on their phone and started reading aloud. "The 75th Ranger Regiment is the U.S. Army's elite Special Operations Force." "Special Operations?" Marcus repeated, sinking onto a nearby bench. Sarah nodded. "We did the jobs that other units couldn't do. Deep behind enemy lines, high-value targets, rescue operations, things that required specific skills." Marcus put his head in his hands. "Oh God, what have I done?" "You challenged someone to a fight," Sarah said simply. "And I accepted, but I didn't know. I thought you were just what? Just a broken veteran who couldn't handle real life?" Marcus winced. Those were almost exactly the words he'd used. Sarah looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Some amazed, some ashamed, some frightened. "I didn't tell you about my background because it doesn't define who I am now. I'm not a ranger anymore. I'm just someone trying to adjust to civilian life. Someone who struggles with nightmares and anxiety and all the things that come with seeing too much too young." She turned back to Marcus. "You were right about one thing. I do work in a coffee shop. I do have PTSD. I do struggle sometimes with normal everyday things that used to be easy." Marcus looked up at her, his eyes filled with shame. "But you were wrong about something else. Military training doesn't make someone think they're special. It teaches you that everyone is capable of more than they know. It teaches you to respect people not because of what they've done, but because of what they might do if pushed. Sarah started walking toward the exit, then paused. The fight is over, Marcus. You don't owe me an apology. You don't owe me anything. But maybe next time you meet someone who seems quiet or broken or different, you might remember that everyone has a story, and some of those stories are harder to live with than others. As Sarah reached the door, someone in the crowd called out, "Wait, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let everyone think you were just regular?" Sarah turned back one more time. "Because I am regular. I'm as regular as anyone else trying to make it through each day. The difference is, some of us have had to learn skills we never wanted to learn. Some of us have seen things we can never unsee. But that doesn't make us heroes or villains. It just makes us human." And with that, Sarah walked out of the gym, leaving behind a room full of people who would never look at quiet, ordinary individuals the same way again. Marcus sat on the bench for a long time after she left, staring at his hands, trying to process what had just happened. He'd challenged a decorated special operations veteran to a fight. He'd mocked her service, called her a fake, and humiliated her in front of a crowd. And she'd responded with the grace and professionalism of someone who'd faced far worse challenges than an arrogant martial artist in a small-town gym. "I need to find her," Marcus said finally. "Why?" Jake asked. "Because I need to do something I should have done from the beginning." But when Marcus looked for Sarah the next day, she was gone. Her apartment was empty. The coffee shop manager said she'd quit without notice. No one seemed to know where she'd gone. The video of their fight, however, lived forever on the internet. Within days, it had millions of views. The comment section was a battlefield between people defending Sarah and people claiming the whole thing was staged. But for those who had been there, who had seen it with their own eyes, the message was clear. Never judge someone by their appearance. Never assume you know someone's story. And never ever underestimate the quiet ones, because sometimes the person serving your coffee used to serve their country in ways that would make your worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror in his apartment, staring at the reflection of someone he barely recognized. The physical bruises from the fight had healed, but the emotional ones ran much deeper. His phone buzzed constantly with messages he didn't want to read. The video of his fight with Sarah had exploded across social media platforms. Ranger Redemption was trending. Never Judge had millions of shares. An arrogant black belt. Well, that one hurt the most. But it wasn't the online humiliation that kept Marcus awake at night. It was the memory of Sarah's eyes when she walked away. The quiet dignity she'd shown even after he'd tried to destroy her reputation. His doorbell rang. Marcus opened it to find Master Chen standing on his doorstep, holding a small piece of paper. "I found her," Master Chen said simply. Marcus's heart jumped. "Where?" "She's working at a veterans center about 2 hours north of here. Place called Haven House. They help former military personnel transition to civilian life." Marcus took the paper with the address written on it. Is she okay?" Master Chen studied Marcus's face carefully. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I need to apologize. Really apologize. Not for the cameras or the internet. For me. Marcus, some apologies come too late. Maybe. But I have to try." The next morning, Marcus drove north through winding mountain roads until he found Haven House. It was a simple building surrounded by gardens and walking paths. A sign out front read, "Healing is a journey, not a destination." Inside, the reception area was warm and welcoming. Soft music played in the background, and the walls were covered with photos of smiling veterans engaged in various activities. "Can I help you?" asked a woman behind the desk. "I'm looking for Sarah Martinez." "I'm an old friend." The woman studied him carefully. "Are you the one from the video?" Marcus's cheeks burned. "Yes. I'll see if she wants to speak with you. Have a seat." Marcus sat in the waiting area, watching through the windows as groups of veterans worked in the gardens outside. Some were missing limbs. Others showed no visible signs of their struggles but moved with the careful precision of people managing invisible wounds. After 20 minutes, Sarah appeared. She looked different here. More relaxed, more at peace. She wore simple jeans and a Haven House t-shirt, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. "Marcus," she said, neither friendly nor hostile. "This is unexpected. Sarah, Marcus stood up, then sat back down, then stood up again. I don't know where to start. Why don't you start with why you're here? Marcus took a deep breath. I came to apologize. And to ask you something. Sarah gestured to a quiet corner with 2 comfortable chairs. Okay, let's talk. They sat facing each other, and for a moment neither spoke. I was wrong, Marcus began. About everything. About you. About military service, about what strength looks like. I was completely, totally wrong. Sarah nodded but didn't respond. I spent weeks thinking about that night, Marcus continued. About what you said, about how you handled everything. And I realized something terrible about myself. What's that? Marcus looked down at his hands. I've been a bully my entire life. I just called it confidence. I told myself I was teaching people respect, but really, I was just making myself feel important by making others feel small. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying him. That's a hard thing to admit. The hardest. But watching you that night, seeing how you fought, how you won, how you handled victory, I realized I've never shown that kind of grace in my entire life. Marcus, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I need to say this. Marcus looked directly at her. You could have destroyed me that night. Physically, sure, but that's not what I mean. When you revealed who you were, when everyone realized what I'd done, you could have made me look like the biggest fool who ever lived. That wasn't the point. I know. And that's what I don't understand. Why didn't you? Why were you so kind to someone who'd been so cruel to you? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the veterans working in the garden. Can I tell you a story? She asked. Marcus nodded. My last mission in Afghanistan, we were sent to extract a high-value target from a compound deep in enemy territory. Intelligence said it was a terrorist leader planning attacks on American bases. Sarah's voice grew softer, more distant. We went in at night. Perfect operation. Found our target exactly where intelligence said he'd be. But when we got to him, Sarah paused. He was just a kid, maybe 19 years old, scared out of his mind. And I realized our intelligence was wrong. This wasn't a terrorist leader. This was just someone's son who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marcus listened intently. My team leader ordered us to complete the mission anyway. Intelligence is intelligence, he said. We follow orders. But I looked at this kid and I saw my little brother at that age. Scared, confused, probably just trying to survive in a world that had gone crazy around him. What did you do? I made a choice that ended my military career. I let him go. Told my team he'd escaped during the extraction. I knew it would mean investigations, disciplinary action, probably the end of my time as a ranger. Marcus was stunned. You threw away your career for a stranger? I threw away my career because sometimes being right is more important than following orders. Sometimes showing mercy is more important than showing strength. Sarah turned back to Marcus. That's why I didn't humiliate you that night. Not because you deserved mercy, but because mercy is what separates us from our worst instincts. You were wrong about me, but destroying you wouldn't have made you right. It would have just made me cruel. Marcus sat in silence for several minutes, processing what she'd told him. You lost everything because you showed compassion to an enemy, he said finally. I didn't lose everything. I lost a job, but I kept my soul. Marcus looked around the peaceful space of Haven House, then back at Sarah. Is this why you're here? Helping other veterans? Sarah smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. This place saved my life. When I came home, I was broken in ways I didn't even understand. PTSD, survivor's guilt, anger at a system that punished me for doing what I thought was right. I was ready to give up completely. What changed? I met Dr. Martinez, no relation. Funny coincidence with the name. She runs this place. She's a former Marine who went through her own struggles coming home. She taught me that healing isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It's about finding ways to use your experience to help others. Sarah gestured toward the window where veterans were working together in the garden. Every person out there has a story. Combat veterans, support personnel, people who served in peacetime and wartime, all dealing with the challenge of figuring out who they are when they're not soldiers anymore. And you help them? We help each other. I lead group therapy sessions for women veterans. I teach self-defense classes for people who've lost their sense of personal safety. I work in the garden because growing things reminds me that life continues, that healing is possible. Marcus watched her face as she spoke about her work. The peace he saw there was something he'd never experienced in his own life. Sarah, can I ask you the question I came here to ask? Go ahead. Marcus took another deep breath. Will you teach me? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? How to be better. How to be the kind of person who shows mercy instead of cruelty. How to use strength to help people instead of hurting them. Sarah studied his face carefully. Why should I believe you're serious about this? Because I've spent 3 weeks watching that video over and over, seeing myself through other people's eyes, and I hate what I see. Because I've realized that everything I thought made me strong actually made me weak. Because, Marcus's voice cracked slightly, because I don't want to be that person anymore. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Marcus, changing who you are isn't something someone else can teach you. It's work you have to do yourself. Then tell me how to start. Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a veteran with one arm was teaching another veteran how to plant seeds. Both men were laughing at something. See those two guys? Sarah pointed. Jim lost his arm to an IED in Iraq. Tony lost his leg to a landmine in Afghanistan. 6 months ago, they hated each other. Why? Different branches of service, different wars, different politics. Jim thought Tony was weak for struggling with PTSD. Tony thought Jim was arrogant for refusing counseling. They got into a fight in the dining hall that took 4 people to break up. Marcus watched the two men working together. What changed? Dr. Martinez made them garden partners, forced them to spend time together, to depend on each other. Jim needed Tony's mobility. Tony needed Jim's reach. They had to cooperate or fail. Sarah turned back to Marcus, and slowly, through working together toward something positive, they realized their differences didn't matter as much as their shared experience. They both understood what it felt like to come home to a world that didn't quite fit anymore. So how does that apply to me? Real change comes through service, Marcus. Through putting other people's needs before your own ego. Through using your abilities to build people up instead of tearing them down. Marcus nodded slowly. What would that look like? Sarah sat back down across from him. What if instead of being the guy who humiliates beginners at the gym, you became the guy who helps them succeed? What if instead of using your martial arts skills to make yourself feel superior, you use them to help people feel safe and confident? You mean like teaching? I mean like serving. There's a difference. Sarah leaned forward. Marcus, you have 15 years of martial arts training. You're strong, skilled, and when you're not being arrogant, you can be inspiring. There are kids in your community who need positive role models. There are women who need to learn self-defense. There are people dealing with bullies who need to learn confidence. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. You're talking about using martial arts to help people instead of just winning trophies. I'm talking about using everything you have, your skills, your strength, your knowledge, to make other people's lives better instead of making yourself feel important. Marcus was quiet for several minutes, turning this idea over in his mind. Would you be willing to help me figure out how to do that? Sarah smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. Marcus, I think that's the first truly humble thing I've ever heard you say. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same gym where he'd fought Sarah, but everything was different. The walls were covered with new signs. Respect every student. Strength serves others, and everyone has value. The trophy case was still there, but next to it was a new display showing photos of students who'd overcome personal challenges through martial arts. Okay, everyone circle up, Marcus called to his class. The group that gathered around him was unlike any martial arts class he'd taught before. There was Maria, a single mother who'd been dealing with an abusive ex-husband. Tommy, a middle school student who'd been bullied for being overweight. Janet, a 60-year-old woman who wanted to feel safe walking to her car at night. David, a veteran dealing with anger management issues. Before we start physical training today, I want to talk about something important, Marcus began. Tommy, can you tell everyone what happened at school this week? Tommy, who 6 months ago had been too shy to speak in class, stood up straighter. This kid Brad tried to take my lunch money again, but instead of getting scared like I used to, I remembered what you taught us about confidence. I looked him in the eye and told him no. Not mean, not angry, just no. And what happened? He walked away. He didn't try to fight me or anything. He just walked away. The class applauded and Tommy beamed with pride. That's what real martial arts looks like, Marcus said. Not fighting unless you absolutely have to. Using your training to avoid conflict, to protect yourself and others, to build confidence instead of fear. Maria raised her hand. Marcus, I used the de-escalation techniques you taught us when my ex showed up at my work. I didn't have to get physical, but knowing I could defend myself if needed, it changed how I carried myself. He could see the difference. Marcus nodded. Exactly. Real strength isn't about overpowering people. It's about being so confident in yourself that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. As the class began their physical training, Marcus walked among his students, offering encouragement and correction with infinite patience. This was nothing like his old teaching style. No showing off, no intimidation, no making people feel small to make himself feel big. After class ended and the students left, Master Chen approached. You know, Marcus, I'm proud of what you've built here. Marcus wiped down equipment as he talked. I'm just trying to do what Sarah showed me. Use what I have to help people instead of hurt them. Speaking of Sarah, I have news. Marcus looked up. What kind of news? She's been invited to speak at a national conference on veteran services. Her program at Haven House has become a model for other centers around the country. Marcus smiled. That's amazing. She deserves all the recognition in the world. There's more. The conference is here in town next month. She'll be the keynote speaker. Marcus felt a mix of emotions. Excitement at the possibility of seeing Sarah again. Nervousness about facing her and hope that she might see how much he'd changed. Master Chen, do you think she'd want to see what we've built here? Master Chen smiled. I think Sarah would be very interested to see how someone can transform themselves when they're truly committed to change. The night of the conference, Marcus sat in the packed auditorium waiting for Sarah to take the stage. He'd brought several of his students with him, wanting them to hear from someone who embodied the principles he was trying to teach. When Sarah walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She looked confident, professional, at peace with herself in a way that Marcus envied. Thank you, she began, waiting for the applause to die down. I want to start with a confession. 2 years ago, I was broken. I was angry, lost, and convinced that my best days were behind me. Marcus leaned forward, hanging on every word. I'd served my country for 8 years, completed multiple combat deployments, and earned commendations I was proud of. But when I came home, I couldn't function in civilian life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't hold a job, couldn't maintain relationships. I felt like a failure. Sarah paused, looking out over the audience. And then something happened that changed my perspective completely. I was publicly challenged and humiliated by someone who thought he knew who I was, based on how I looked and acted. In that moment, I had a choice. I could respond with anger and cruelty, or I could respond with grace and truth. Marcus felt his cheeks burn as he realized she was talking about him. I chose grace. Not because the person challenging me deserved it, but because I needed to prove to myself that I was still the person I'd been trained to be, someone who protects rather than destroys, someone who builds rather than tears down. Sarah clicked to the next slide, showing before and after photos of Haven House. That experience taught me something vital about healing. We don't heal by hiding from our past or pretending it didn't happen. We heal by using our experiences, even the painful ones, to help others. She told the audience about Haven House, about the veterans she worked with, about the programs they'd developed. Every person we help reminds us that our struggles have meaning, that our pain can become someone else's hope, that what broke us can be used to heal others. As Sarah continued her speech, Marcus felt tears running down his cheeks. She was talking about transformation, about redemption, about the possibility of becoming better than you were. After the speech ended, Marcus waited outside the auditorium, hoping for a chance to speak with Sarah. When she finally emerged, surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, she spotted him immediately. She excused herself from the crowd and walked over. Marcus, I wasn't sure you'd be here. I wouldn't have missed it. Sarah, your speech it was incredible. Thank you. Marcus gestured toward his students who were waiting respectfully nearby. Sarah, I'd like you to meet some people. This is Maria, Tommy, Janet, and David. They're part of the program I've been building. Sarah shook hands with each of them, and Marcus could see her evaluating them with her trained eye. Marcus talks about you all the time, Tommy said shyly. He says you taught him what real strength looks like. Sarah raised an eyebrow and looked at Marcus. Is that so? Marcus nodded. You did. That night at the gym, you showed me that true power comes from lifting people up, not putting them down. I've been trying to live up to that example ever since. Maria stepped forward. Because of what Marcus learned from you, I learned how to stand up to my abuser. I'm not a victim anymore, David nodded. And I learned how to control my anger instead of letting it control me. Janet smiled. And I learned that being 60 doesn't mean being helpless. Sarah looked at each of them, then back at Marcus. This is what you've been doing for 6 months? This is what you inspired me to do, Marcus replied. You showed me that everyone has value, that everyone has a story, that everyone deserves respect. I've been trying to pass that lesson along. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. That night when I beat you, how did it feel? Marcus thought carefully before answering. At first, humiliating, devastating, like my whole identity had been stripped away. And now I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. You didn't just beat me in a fight, Sarah. You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. Sarah smiled, and Marcus saw approval in her eyes for the first time. You know what, Marcus? I think you finally understand what I was trying to show you. What's that? That losing a fight doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And being human means you can grow, change, and become better than you were. Sarah looked at Marcus's students again, seeing the confidence and respect they showed each other. Keep doing this work, Marcus. The world needs more people who use their strength to serve others. As Sarah walked away to rejoin the crowd of well-wishers, Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before. Not the empty satisfaction of dominating someone weaker, but the deep fulfillment that comes from helping others discover their own strength. Tommy tugged on his sleeve. Sensei Marcus, she seems really proud of you. Marcus smiled, watching Sarah interact with other veterans across the room. You know what, Tommy? For the first time in my life, I'm proud of me too. 6 months later, Marcus received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a simple wooden plaque with an inscription. To Marcus, thank you for proving that everyone can change, grow, and become better than they were. Use your strength to serve others. SM. Marcus hung the plaque in his gym right next to the trophy case. But now when students asked about his achievements, he didn't talk about the trophies he'd won. He talked about the lives he'd helped change. He talked about the bullies who'd learned compassion, the victims who'd found confidence, and the angry people who'd discovered peace. He talked about a woman who'd taught him that true victory isn't about defeating your opponent, it's about becoming someone worth respecting. And that's the end of this incredible story. But the real question is, what would you do if you met someone like Sarah? Would you judge them by their appearance, their job, their struggles? Or would you remember that everyone has a story, and some of those stories contain more strength and courage than you could ever imagine? The next time you see someone who seems quiet, different, or broken, remember Marcus and Sarah. Remember that the person serving your coffee might be a decorated veteran. The janitor might be a former CEO who lost everything, but kept their dignity. The shy student might have survived things that would break most people. Strength isn't about muscles or trophies or the ability to intimidate others. Real strength is about lifting people up, showing mercy when you could show cruelty, and using whatever power you have to make the world a little bit better. Never judge people by how they look. Never assume you know someone's story, and never underestimate the quiet ones, because sometimes the most ordinary people have lived the most extraordinary lives. What's your story? What strength are you hiding? What could you accomplish if you used your abilities to serve others instead of serving yourself? Hit that like button if this story reminded you to treat everyone with respect. Subscribe for more incredible true stories that will change how you see the world. And share this with someone who needs to remember that everyone has value. Remember, you never know who you're really talking to. So treat everyone like they might be a hero in disguise, because they just might be.